Christian Horner and George Russell have engaged in a war of words after the Mercedes driver commented on the current situation with the Austrian team and the issues emerging in the internal circles. However, the team principal of Red Bull is taking none of this lightly, and he hasn't held back when defending his team and drivers. With Mercedes competition likely to ramp up in 2025 and Red Bull facing some serious issues, could we see a reigniting of the 2021 rivalry with a different Mercedes driver this time? One of the most controversial topics in the past couple of months was definitely the Russell-Verstappen drama. The Mercedes driver has been quite explicit about how he feels regarding the four-time world champion and the Austrian team in general. One of the facts that he pointed out was that around 25% of the engineers from Red Bull want to leave the team and are sending their CVs out, left, right, and center. George hinted that a probable cause of this is the behavior of Verstappen when something doesn't go his way, using Budapest 2024 as an example. When talking about it, Russell said, "I am not questioning Max's driving abilities one single bit, but the second he does not have the fastest car, let's take Budapest as an example. He crashes into Lewis, he slams his whole team, and he loses the plot straight away." After that race, he claimed 25% of Verstappen's engineering team was sending CVs to Mercedes, McLaren, and Aston Martin because they said they couldn't deal with a guy like that. Obviously, this statement needs to be taken with a little bit of reserve because we don't know whether or not Russell has legitimate information regarding this matter. Of course, rumors are rumors, chatter is chatter, and the people involved in the Formula One world will always have more information than us regarding matters like this. However, Russell going out publicly and declaring such a statement does suggest that there is something brewing in the background at Red Bull, although we just don't know quite what it is yet. This can be supported by the claims that Jos Verstappen made regarding Max's future with the Austrian team. As the father of a four-time world champion, you'd want to keep things as private as possible and not go out in public and say that if Red Bull did not have a race-winning car in 2025, his son would leave, whether Max likes it or not. This leaves a bad stamp for him as a driver and individual because he doesn't speak much about these issues publicly, which could be a factor supporting the cause that the engineers don't want to work with such a type of person. Nevertheless, Horner made sure to let Russell know where his place is, as Mercedes is definitely far from its golden days when they were crushing their opponents with 1-minute advantages throughout an entire race. When talking about Russell's comment about Red Bull, Horner felt like they weren't exactly needed in a situation like this, and that he should be much smarter by focusing on his own team rather than trying to look for trouble where it doesn't exist. Furthermore, the team principal of Red Bull said, "I'd be more worried about other issues if I were George. I don't know where he thinks and who he thinks the engineers were offering their services to, but all the key people have made long-term commitments to the company." If you look at people like Lambaz and the key members of the engineering team, they are all on long-term contracts. One of the less pleasant sides of this business are the lengths that will be gone to try and capitalize on other issues in other teams. You have to remember that we came off a season where we didn't just dominate, but we annihilated the opposition in 2023 and won 22 out of 23 races. But when there's so much at stake, other teams will use whatever tools they have to try and destabilize what has been a hugely successful team. However, there is one thing that we must not forget. Red Bull has indeed lost some key members in the previous couple of months, starting with Adrian Newey and ending with Wheatley and others, who were with the team for almost 2 decades. This does leave a hole that the other engineers might feel is too big to cover from anyone in Red Bull. The fact that these 3 people themselves had a huge number of highly experienced personnel working directly beneath them goes to show that they might have pulled the plug on Red Bull and moved to a new venture. This is one of the primary reasons why Horner is keeping the goals for Red Bull realistic ahead of the 2025 season. He understands that his team has a mountain to climb and that we are not going to see any type of domination like we did in 2023 and the first races of 2024. Of course, the challenge might not be as big as the one that awaits them in 2026 because they are starting off the season as rookie engine manufacturers, and Horner believes that the experience of Mercedes and Ferrari is going to prove crucial here. So, with the new regulations going heavily around the engine and the battery of the car, and less around aerodynamics, it will be interesting to see how the 2026 season will bode for Red Bull. This has a lot of meaning for Red Bull's future lineup because, as Jos Verstappen said, if the team is incapable of producing a race-winning car, then Max will be looking elsewhere. When talking about it, Jos said, "Anything is possible. He can stay at Red Bull if he sees a sense in it. His goal is to be able to win races. If he is of the opinion that this is no longer possible at Red Bull, a change is not ruled out. Red Bull has to build a car that is no longer so difficult to drive. If you look at the second half of 2024, you can't be optimistic. Red Bull has a big task ahead of it in 2025. To top that off, Red Bull has acknowledged the fact that 2025 is going to be a very difficult season to overcome because the rest of the grid has caught up. And they have a lot of expectations for Lawson, with Marco stating that the deficit between him and Verstappen shouldn't be bigger than 3 to 10 in both post-race simulation and over one lap. Of course, this adds more mental pressure to the Kiwi driver because it's an automatic activation of the toxic environment that many have labeled Red Bull to be. And it can't result well if the driver is told that his mission is to not even try to compete with Verstappen, but to keep close to him. Liam Lawson himself said that if he doesn't get the job done, he is very likely to be sacked out of the team, with youngsters like Coda Haar and even Lindblad waiting on the sidelines to be subbed in for that second seat next to Verstappen. When talking about his first full season as a Red Bull driver, Lawson opened up about the expectations that the team has for him, further adding, "Obviously, I have to be realistic, and so realistically, I know going in, I'm going to a whole bunch of tracks I've never done before, and it's my first full season. So I'm not expecting to go in there and fight with him for race wins instantly, but obviously, I'm expecting to perform well and do the drive that the team needs me to do, and I'm obviously not there to lose either. I'm only there for one reason, so it's exciting. I think Red Bull's environment for the last 6 years has always been under pressure. That's how it started when I was 16. When they signed me, I had the phone calls from Helmut every other week about doing the job. Otherwise, you're axed." Those kinds of moments are obviously, as a young driver, putting a lot of pressure on you, and that builds you really for F1. So I feel like I've sort of been developed for this opportunity. All of this goes to show that Red Bull has not fully fixed their issues, whether it's the lineup or the internal problems. But that won't keep Verstappen from competing and trying to win the 5th championship in a row. Of course, this is going to be made almost impossible, given the fact that the team will be lacking a lot of resources and the rest have made significant progress. So, with all this in mind, do you think Russell's comments on Red Bull are legitimate? And more importantly, do you think the response from Horner was adequate? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to know more about Perez's future in Formula 1, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.